This video is about human diversity. What is diversity? Here's a couple of definitions. The condition of having or being composed of differing elements. Variety, especially the inclusion of different types of people, such as people of different races or cultures, in a group or organization. This is from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. From NPR, which is National Public Radio, more and more organizations define diversity really broadly, says Eric Peterson, who works on diversity issues. Really, it's any way any group of people can differ significantly from another group of people. Appearance, sexual orientation, veteran status, your level in the organization. It has moved far beyond the legally protected categories that we have always looked at. What is cultural diversity? Diversity is nothing more than a difference from the majority. In any culture, there is a majority and many minorities. Culture is a set of norms that set standards for a society of what is acceptable behavior. An example might be, in the city of Boise, Idaho, there's probably more diversity here in terms of minorities than anywhere else in the state. However, white, privileged, middle-class Americans are still the majority. That means that people who have come to Idaho because they are refugees, for example, are minorities in the sense that they have come from places where they have different languages, their skin is a different color, they have different traditions, different ways of dealing with money and of getting around. Okay, the cultural variety and cultural differences that exist in the world, a society, or an institution. This is cultural diversity. Dying languages and urbanization are threats to cultural diversity. In other words, once minorities adopt the dominant or majority culture's language, they may never be able to speak their language again in the same way that they did originally. When people are moved into larger areas, you tend to assimilate to the people who are around you, and it's possible that you may adopt somebody else's culture instead of your own. The inclusion of diverse people in a group or organization to embrace cultural diversity in the workplace. What is one of the results of diversity? If systems of inequality are present, the most likely communities or groups to be disadvantaged are those whose identity is not the norm, or the dominant group. In this UF 200 course, we refer to diversity as it relates to communities of people who are subject to prejudice, discrimination, marginalization, and oppression. Remember, on the previous slide, we talked about how the dominant culture, at least in the city of Boise, Idaho, tends to be white middle-class people. Diversity, then, is those communities who intentionally or unintentionally are adversely affected by the systems of inequality. So systems of inequality that affect diverse communities would be policies that ask that you get around using the local transportation systems, that you drive a car, that you have a bike. For instance, not that you use your elephant or camel to get around in Idaho. Can you name communities that are affected? And why might they feel bad or threatened? Well, like I said earlier, refugee populations tend to settle in Idaho. We're one of the biggest places where people settle because it's not such a big place, and we do have access to agricultural communities. But if you come and live in a town when you used to live out in the village, it might be overwhelming. You might not be given the same benefit of a doubt that somebody who's a white middle-class person might. People might expect that you need to give up your language and give up your culture in order to be part of the Boise community. This is not always true. It's just a hypothetical. The dilemma of equality and diversity. Diversity is based on actual practices and beliefs or attitudes, in addition to the more common and overlapping understanding of diversity as based on socially constructed categories of race, ethnicity, or on categories such as class, nationality, gender, or sexual orientation. This diversity is expressed in significant contrasts in family life, leisure, work, and consumption, from hyperachieving, success-oriented groups to leisure and entertainment-oriented subcultures, and includes the myriad of groupings that are markers defined by us. Diversity is thus tied to life conduct or lifestyles, clusters of habits and orientations that involve modes of acting, routines of dress, diet, and the favored milieu for encountering others, and lifestyle pluralism, a melange of relatively unranked groups that have differing lifestyles and discernible social boundaries. I, for instance, am happy that I live in a house, that it's on one level, that I have 3 bedrooms, and I can share it with my kids. I would not be happy if I had to live in an apartment and rent. I prefer to own. So it's possible that I have a bias towards people who own their own homes versus people who are stuck renting. That's a prejudice on my part, that they are stuck renting. It is important to keep in mind, however, that these groups are not just self-chosen, but power and structure often play a role in forming them. Think about that. Diverse communities are the most oppressed by systems of inequality. People of color, Black, Hispanic, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Native, also known as indigenous peoples in every country, women, disabled, LGBTQ+, people living in poverty, immigrants, refugees, religious communities, and more. These are the most oppressed by systems of inequality. Difference from a norm can be associated with material inequality because of many factors: traditions, cultural factors, religious, political, biological. 2, we tend to group people into us and them. 3, we take of our own community, of us, and we see us as normal. We think less of others, or them, because they are not normal like us. Thoughts and actions such as prejudice, discrimination, marginalization, oppression of others who are not like our own community of us, and we might also have value judgments and beliefs about others that we hold as truths, that they are bad or undeserving or less worthy. I think you may find that's true as we get to the point where we're actually studying a couple of oppressed communities. Making diversity normal, include everyone and all. Metacognition, inquire into our own judgments and beliefs about those who don't look like us, talk like us, or live like us. In other words, consider your own thought processes. Think about how you've been thinking about diversity. Become flexible and adaptable about the possibility of changing our beliefs and welcoming diverse communities. Check out the truth about communities that are different from us and develop empathy. Become open-minded and receptive towards meeting new people and receiving their ideas. The Boise State University's Statement of Diversity. Diversity is the variety of intersecting identities that make individuals unique, including but not limited to race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, gender expression or identity, socioeconomic status, age, country of origin, veteran status, abilities, spirituality, religious beliefs, and political beliefs. Diversity recognizes the uniqueness of individuals, populations, groups, and their perspectives and experiences. So it's very important, those last 2 things. What is the perspective of somebody who's different from you? And are their experiences anything like the ones that you have? Where do you see diversity? From the different people you encounter. The culture of the people you meet includes ethnicity, language, religious beliefs, local or family traditions and holidays that are celebrated, knowledge or education, food, recipes for tacos or eggs or traditional dinner meals, or what your cultural group finds acceptable and normal to eat. You know, there's probably 100 different ways to make tacos and eggs. Okay, what about location? Did you live on an island, a continent, a city, a country, near the ocean, the rivers, the mountains, the plains, deserts, and canyons? What's your mode of transportation? Taking public transportation, walking, driving, taking a boat? Which bike to buy? Which car to buy? Why cultural diversity matters. This is a TED Talk that you'll be watching. Language diversity reflects the different traditions and lifestyles of groups of people. It really separates people when they speak a different language. There is a value to cultural diversity and to the people who represent smaller, diverse groups. The loss of cultural diversity happens when a small number of cultural groups are determining the shape and fabric of society, representing an imbalance of power. And what this TED Talk is saying, I believe, is that if only a white middle class group of people are determining the shape and fabric of society, that means that we are also, and I include myself in that as a white middle class person, we are also determining how other people are going to end up living, because people like me are in a majority. Remember, we all have our cultural identities that help shape our decision making. And here's a big list of those: ethnicity, religious beliefs, race, education status, languages spoken, location in the world, economic opportunities, government recognizes and protects you, government does not recognize or protect you, economic status, family traditions, your gender, political stance, your social mobility, your ability to move up in the world to make more money and get into a better place, your national heritage, the experience of being oppressed, the privilege of never being oppressed, family members close in relationship, if you're single or married, if you work in professional careers or you work as a laborer or unskilled labor, your gender identity, if there was violence or abuse in the family when you were growing up, and if you lived in a single-parent family growing up. Why does cultural diversity matter? Each of us has many pieces of our identity that make up who we are and how we make decisions, including whether to act or not act, or how we act. So that's very important. Our identity helps us make decisions about what we're going to do in any given moment. Being oppressed may include the denial of a person's cultural identity, the belief that it is not important and not worthy of being recognized. Being a person who has privilege and power is often a result of our cultural identity, as is being a person who oppresses others. Being part of the solution when faced with oppression is often a result of our cultural identities. Thank you. Diversity asks, who is in the room? How many more of any minority identity do we have this year than last? Equity asks, who is trying to get in the room but can't? Whose presence in the room is under constant threat or erasure? What conditions have we created that maintain certain groups as the perpetual majority here? Inclusion asks, has everyone's ideas been heard? Is this environment safe for everyone to feel like they belong? Justice asks, whose ideas won't be taken as seriously because they aren't in the majority? Whose safety is being sacrificed and minimized to allow others to be comfortable, maintaining dehumanizing views? These are very good questions, and we'll come back to them. Thank you.